Yeah.
Two hours late.
Here's the manual.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to take a moment to just wish everybody a very happy end of August. And this is our first meeting in a couple months, so I'd like to call our Tuesday, August 26th meeting to order. Would everybody please rise for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Boys, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Van Horn.
Here.
Mr. Sergio is absent. Mr. Jess.
Here.
Mr. Carlson is absent. Mrs. Sherwin.
Here.
Mrs. Kraska.
Here.
Mrs. Dale.
Here.
Mr. Kimmick.
Here.
Mr. Garcia is absent. And Mrs. Shaw.
Here.
Okay, we have quorum. All right, public notice, adequate notice of this meeting in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 entitled the Open Public Meetings Act has been provided by action of the Board of Education at its regular meeting on January 7, 2025. Notices to the Courier News and Star Ledger circulated in the school district, and the posted notice to this effect on the Board of Education website and Building Boulder Board Administrative Headquarters, 51 West Cliff Street, Somerville, New Jersey. Okay. Public comment. This time, comment is invited on agenda items and non-agenda items or any matter related to the school district. Would anybody like to make a public comment? All right, can I have a motion to close public comment? Mr. Jess, can I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Sherwin? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public comment is closed. All right, so the structure of tonight's meeting is a little bit unusual. We are going to take about an hour and a half to have a discussion really about just the board's self-evaluation and kind of a precursor to the development of our goals. And just if anybody is on the feed right now, we are going to go into an executive session around 6 o'clock and anticipate coming out of executive session close to 7 o'clock, at which time we will do our regular meeting and address all the business of the board at that point. So the board retreat for members who are present right now, and we do expect a couple other members to be joining us in just a few minutes. I think it's important for everybody to recognize you have the board self-evaluation in the folder that's on your table in front of you. You could see in that there's two documents that were provided to you earlier in the summer. There's the chart, which is the summary of the evaluation responses, and then there's the actual detailed set of responses that are just compiled and they're anonymous, and you know what your comments were, but you don't know what anybody else's comments were. The intent of this, I think, is not to evaluate administration. I just remind everybody that nobody has been Rice, so we cannot speak about any staff member, any administrator by name or by title. I think what we are talking about is really the board itself. So when we think about the self-reflection is focused on us, not on the administration and not on staff or anybody else. And I think it's important to just keep that context in mind as we think about board goals, because the board goals apply to us and they apply to our function as a governance body. And the district goals really are goals that the administration puts together working with staff, and that is the charge of the administration, not the Board of Education. So I just want to set that context for everybody. But last time we did this, when I was president a few years ago, it was just a very open discussion about people's impressions of the evaluation itself, conclusions that people maybe saw or questions that people had. So I'm going to kind of throw it out to just members right now that this is the opportunity for a very open discussion for the next hour, hour and a half or so, right? As long as we want that to go on. All right, so does anybody want to start? When do we want to do, well, before we start, when do we want to do?
Might be best if we go first. We'll give a little context, give our district goals, and we have the discussion and your goals.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I apologize. All right, so our curriculum department representatives are here to just provide an overview of district goals. And I think that may be helpful context for us to have. I was wondering why you're looking at me. But I think it's also important for us to kind of recognize there was a few things that Superintendent Labisco and I talked about in terms of areas of focus that the board felt last year were important as well. And that was just the way that the district has been building up the ability to kind of look at data, collect data, and ways that the board might want to consider that data as well. So I think that's important for us to have as context as well before we go forward. So I'm going to turn that over to you, JR. I apologize for that.
No problem. So first of all, excited to be here. I have two very special guests to help us with this presentation. We want to do a brief overview and discussion, really harbored on a couple different things. First of all, we want to recognize about a year ago we were delivered the district audit, curriculum audit, and that provided a roadmap for a lot of the actions we took in year one. So a real quick look at some of the important things that maybe you didn't see in the audit dashboard or in some of the reminders in the newsletter, just some really important things that are going on that are going to really impact what goes on in the classroom. That's a real quick slide, but more importantly, I'm going to turn things over to Mary Kane, our curriculum director, to talk about some very important things, and our curriculum supervisor, Gina, to talk about some important tier 1 changes that are happening, all related to the usage of data here in Somerville. As you know, that was a really big part of the audit and a lot of our groundwork in year 1, and I think it's important for everyone to know that. So if you look at the agenda very quickly, we're going to talk about our district goals. We're going to revisit a couple data points that were in the audit, just real quick so you can see something. It's 2 quick slides. Then schedule for academic progress. In other words, how are we going to communicate with you? What type of data is going to be communicated? What kind of context is going to be necessary to understand that data that's shared with you? And that's really our goal and what we want to bring out of today. And that requires talking about a couple of important data sources, and then finally that targeted instruction that comes out of those data sources. So with that said, my team and I, actually one quick note, one of the main reasons we're doing this is there were 2 important recommendations out of the audit that I want to point out to everyone and remind them. The board should receive reports on academic progress and growth towards goals at least 2 times annually. And secondly, the board should be trained on understanding the metrics associated with the goals in order to increase accountability. So that's really the overall arching point and direction that I want to provide for you today. So with that said, my team and I went into a retreat in July, and the purpose of that retreat, amongst other things, was to set a course for our district. Now, these district goals are ones that are communicated to everyone on the staff, everyone in the school community, and of course the board right now. You're receiving these first. And these goals then are reflected in the goals in each of the buildings, and every staff member here is going to be working and pulling and rowing in the same direction towards those goals. So first one being academic achievement. By the end of the school year, we want to increase student proficiency in meeting or exceeding by 3%. Tier 1 data-based decision-making. By the end of the school year, all staff will build their capacity to implement high-quality Tier 1 framework. And culture and climate, to implement an empirically supported third-party assessment that will provide information leading to continuous enhancement of school climate and culture. All of these feed to better academic opportunities for our students. All of these provide them a better learning environment and opportunity to be successful. And that is the #1 goal we have here as an administrative team.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The 3% is very specific, which is great. Just curious how we got to that number.
Reflecting on the past years, the type of growth that was seen, and also the idea that if we can continue to grow 3% as a whole. Now remember, we're not going to say that this is the end-all be-all. This is one metric, right? We're not chasing scores. We're looking to strengthen what's going on in the classroom. But we do have to have some type of milestone to really evaluate whether that is moving us in the right direction. The building goals are drilling down to the student individually. So each and every student's going to be met where they are and not just lumped into some bigger data point. So we don't want the board to think that's what's going on, but we do need an overarching milestone for us to aim towards. And as we work to raise overall proficiency, what we really want to look at is making sure every student's moving in that same direction. We have some students that are multiple grade levels behind, and we want to meet them where they are, and that's part of why we have Gina here to talk about how the Tier 1 out, every student is going to get that high quality instruction on a daily basis. If they need to be pulled out for Tier 2 and 3, if they need that more rigorous opportunity, it's going to be provided for them, and that's that one slide I have for some audit moves that were made that are really important for everyone to understand that we strengthen the infrastructure to be able to do that. So that tier 1 instruction, I'm going to leave to Gina, so you're not hearing it, multiple times. And I think it's really important for you to hear that part of it, because that's how we're going to be able to reach all our students on a regular basis. So the reason these exist is very simple. In last year's audit, the fall 24 numbers were shared with you. All I wanted to show you was where we are 1 year from now. There's a million other data points we could give you. And when we go and show our data calendar to you, we're going to have to provide and share with you our Access and NJ GPA scores. We're going to have to provide our NJ SLA scores. We're going to have a mid-year check-in and an end-of-the-year check-in. But what I just thought was important here is last year these numbers were presented, and these are where those numbers are this year, 1 year after. So last year in the fall, entering grade 3, 2, and 5. This year, 2 and 5 with a slightly higher percentage. Entering grade 6, 1 and 2 last year, 2 and 3 this year going in. And entering high school 2 and 5 last year, 1 and 2 this year. So there was incremental progress in how students were performing in this very first year in ELA. Math, same thing we did. These were the data points that were on that presentation last year. I think they were just written out, not in a graph. I thought it was easier to see in the graph. That's why it's presented this way. So 1 and 4 to 3 and 10. Entering grade 5, 1 and 3, 4 and 10. Entering grade 8, 1 and 4, 2 and 5. And entering high school, 1 and 4 to 3 and 10. So just wanted to show you a quick glance at what we looked like last year entering the school year and this year. So this is the one point I wanted to bring up about the audit that I thought was really important for everyone to see. And if you look at some essential audit work that happened immediately and is happening to set up a more successful school year so that our students can be met where they are and get the rigorous instruction they need on a day in and day out basis, we have to look at data in action. I've talked about this many times, but our data teams at each of the buildings on the district level are fully formed. Those work constantly at interpreting the data and providing it for teachers so they can make real-time impact on our students' instruction. All right, that's better data warehousing as well, so we're making sure that that data is rigorously checked and it's accurate and it represents where our students are. And a smarter assessment schedule, meaning we're constantly looking at when are we assessing them, what are we assessing them with, and is it accurately giving us data that is helpful to understanding the entirety of what our students are doing. There's a system shift that happened immediately and is continuing, and that's an expansion and realignment of our intervention system. So, as you know, when this was presented last year, that wasn't coherent in nature. We really spent a lot of time getting the training and coherence amongst that in all of our buildings, and obviously that work will continue. But that led and was done through staff training, stronger practices, and prioritizing core instruction, which again we'll be talking about briefly on Tier 1. Smart scheduling, this started lightly last year and in a more intense fashion this year, making sure that students are scheduled strategically so that there isn't as wide of an array of students in each and every classroom, so that our teachers can really focus in and hone in on where our students are in a realistic way. At Vanderveer, instructional coaches, you'll see one on the agenda. We have another one in the works to get our teachers that real-time instruction with real-time support with coaches. At SMS, expanding before and during the day interventions, which was really important. They didn't have enough intervention help. They have an interesting schedule that we're trying to work through and to provide as much as we possibly can and get more students. We're doubling the amount of students that are going to be able to get those Tier 2 and 3s. And then in the high school, new math and ELA lab periods. Those are students that are multiple grade levels behind, that in addition to their ELA and math class, they're going to have a lab class that's paired with that. And that's going to be able to help accelerate them and catch them up in real time. We're not just going to throw them to the wolves into a classroom and expect them to miraculously raise multiple grade levels. They'll have that normal instruction in their ELA and math class, but they'll also have this lab class. We thought that was absolutely essential to get our students the help they needed, and that hadn't been happening. So those are just some really important audit points that I wanted to make to you, just to show some things that are going to be able to help our students with added boots on the ground, added intervention services, added coaching, all the things that they need to be more successful. With that said, we do want to report this out to you. We need to be held accountable, we need metrics that can be understood, and we need to provide that for not only the board but the public, and that's what this is about here. So as you know, we need in September to report out on GPA and access. In October and November, depending on when we get the SLA reports, we'll provide that for you as well. Again, those are just 2 data points. But then January and June, mid-year and end of the year, a lot of that is going to really dig into our localized data systems, which will be talked about by Mary. So those are important, and those are utilized constantly by our team. In addition, our curriculum team will also be receiving those updates regularly using those local data sources. So with all that said, I'm going to turn things over to Mary. The clicker works as well. Mary King, our curriculum director.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to work us through the next part of this conversation where we're talking about reporting out data. And I wanted to bring like a common understanding to us about the data points that we use in district, and also the state expectations of state standardized testing and kind of what we use to kind of help us prepare students to support them in meeting their academic goals. So the NJDOE requires us to administer the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, and this year there is a nuance to it. There's something new that they announced, but I'm going to get to that next. But just to give you the purpose of that assessment, measures where students' progress is towards meeting end-of-year expectations on the New Jersey Student Learning Standards in math, English language arts, and in science for grades 3 and 9. No, 3 and 8. Science.
5 and 8.
5 and 8, thank you. But the other grades are 3 through 9. So ELA is 3 through 9, and math is 3 through 9. So science is just 5 and 8. Thank you. The other state requirement is for the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, which is just for grade 11. And the state requires that so that students are assessed in math and English language arts for the purpose of meeting the state graduation requirement. So those are the 2 things that we're required to administer through NJDOE. With that being said, this year on August 13th, I believe, they sent out a new broadcast message saying that there is going to be a new testing coming out. It's NJSLA Adaptive and NJGPA Adaptive. So it's a computer adaptive assessment, which is different from what we had in the past. And the computer adaptive assessment will just be for math and ELA for the NJSLA. For science, it will be using the previous platform where they just tested for end-of-year meeting standards. The new computer adaptive test is personalized experience. So it's giving students questions based on the responses to the previous questions. And then their outcomes will be closer to where their current working level of skills is. And then this format is actually less stressful for kids because they're getting questions they're able to answer, and it's continually adapting further. All right. So the district local assessments that we use, the benchmark assessments that we use iReady and we use Lincoln. So iReady is used K through 8 in math and English language arts. It's a diagnostic assessment, which is also computer adaptive. So it responds again, just like the new NJSLA will. It responds to students' responses as they answer each question. It adapts the next question it gives to students. So it gives us the results it pinpoints their exact skill level, which is important. And then teachers are able to use that data to inform their instruction. It also shows students' growth over a year's time, as well as student stretch growth, which means if a student is not as working below grade level, it shows us where they are at meeting and becoming grade level. So they may, over a year's time, if they are 2 grade levels below, that's how far they have to get to become grade level, and it shows their growth towards that progress on grade level. So not just their growth over a year's time, but their growth towards becoming on grade level. So again, the teachers use this to inform their instruction. It's administered 3 times a year, and it focuses on reading and math. So you can see here the skills that are assessed in reading is phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, vocabulary and comprehension. And for math, it's numbers and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement, data, and geometry. So we also use Linkit, and Linkit is kind of like our data warehousing. So it does house all of our data as far as our universal screening data. It houses our iReady data, but it also is a diagnostic. So last year we kind of explored it a little bit and did a soft launch where the high school math department kind of gave their assessments and were able to see their progress over time. This year we're going to be administering it in both math and ELA at the high school. And it measures end of year expectations towards the standards. So again, this will be given 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end. And then all students are encountering those, grade level standard questions throughout the assessment. The teachers also use this to inform their instruction on where the students are and how they can get them to further meet, the standards towards the end of the year goals. The beginning of the year kind of just, when it's given, it is assessing their end of year expectations. So there are different benchmark scores that it has, so it's the beginning of the year score is not what they would expect to have. The cutoff scores are different for each time of the year to allow for students' growth. So the beginning covers the standards from the entire grade level, but even standards that they have not yet been exposed to because it's the beginning of the year. So it gives us kind of like a benchmark of where we want to go and what students know already coming in. And then the middle of year checks their growth towards that, and the end of year kind of checks what do they know over the time, and what have they done to finally meet grade level expectations as far as New Jersey student learning standards go. So the teachers are going to be able to look at this data and respond to it, and it'll inform their instruction moving forward. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Gina. Just keeping in mind, our goal of using the data to inform instruction is to kind of close the gap for students and bridge those gaps so that there's not as much learning that needs to be, or not as much growth that needs to happen. So we're looking to grow them. With that being said, is we want to make sure that there are our instruction and we're using our data to meet the majority of the class. The kids who do need extra, who are 2 or 3 levels below grade level, they're the students who may need to have tier 2 or tier 3 instruction. And Gina's going to talk a little bit about the MTSS process and tier 1 instruction and how we're going to be able to develop that structure to support that. So I'm going to turn that over to Gina.
Thank you. Okay, so all this talk about data, which is great, and it's really best optimized within a data-driven framework, which MTSS, or multi-tiered system of supports, is. It's built on a public health model where there's universal prevention, which is really those things that you do for everybody that can be reasonably implemented that mitigate risk. In education, we refer to that as tier 1, so you're thinking about that as the core instruction that everybody is receiving to meet those grade level standards. And then students for whom tier 1 is not sufficient to meet those needs, more intensive supports are provided to them. So in education, again, within a multi-tiered system, we refer to those as tier 2 and tier 3. Now this is New Jersey's model of MTSS. They refer to it as New Jersey Tiered System of Supports. You can see that there are a continuum of supports provided to students. Every student is receiving tier 1, that's the universal support. And then based on need, students may be receiving supplemental supports through tier 2 and tier 3 intervention. NJTSS is supported by district and school leadership, family and community engagement, and positive school culture and climate. So those are those things that are sort of informing and undergirding the process as well. So when we talk about a system of supports, I just thought it was important to understand really what it is versus what it is not. MTSS, as the name indicates, is a systems change initiative. And when we think about systems, MTSS really locates the need within the system, not individual teachers or students. So it's really looking at how the system itself needs to be adjusted. It's a continuum of supports, meaning these tiers of support, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, they're aligned and they're an extension of one another. Things are not happening in isolation. So some of the important tenets of MTSS are alignment and coherence, and we want to think about those when students are moving between those tiers. And fundamentally, really, MTSS is an allocation of resources, and it's using data to really match resources and instruction to students' need. and it gets more intensified as the student's need grows. So tier 1, it really starts here when we think about MTSS. So there's a sort of sometimes a misconception that MTSS is about intervention. It really, most importantly, is about prevention. And tier 1 is the prevention tier. It's that high quality, evidence-based core instruction that every student is receiving every day. It is the universal prevention, and it's our most powerful tool. Now, when tier 1 is we think about the strength of tier 1, we can measure that by thinking about at least 80% of students' needs being met through tier 1 instruction. That's a goal, right, that you have, and you put in place, incremental sort of goals to get to there. But that is really something that we're looking at to make sure it's happening. Now, why do we have that 80%? It's because you really want to have the majority, that actually more than the majority, right? At least 80% of students' needs being met through tier 1, so that you have a reduced need for students requiring tier 2 and tier 3. And that's important not only for the individual benefits that academic proficiency brings to a student, to the school system, the district, but there's organizational benefits as well. Tier 2 and tier 3 supplemental intervention is really resource intensive, time intensive, and for it to be effective and to be really intensified relative to need, if it's being asked to be provided to too many students, it just cannot be intensified enough to meet the need. So sometimes we say in MTSS that you cannot intervene out of a tier 1 problem. So it's really important to focus efforts on tier 1. So that's why that's the goal of the district. When we think about high quality tier 1, there are some characteristics of high quality tier 1. That includes evidence-based scientific learning principles like direct and explicit instruction, gradual release models where there's some modeling and practice and feedback. It's facilitated through both whole group and data-driven differentiation, so every student's needs are being met and that they are being supported to achieve grade level standards and proficiencies. There's also class-wide intervention, and if there are a high proportion of students in a class who might need support, class-wide intervention can be developed in that case as well. Standards aligned, and there's also enrichments for students exceeding benchmarks. It's not just a framework for students who are striving towards those proficiencies. When we think about the characteristics of instruction, that's sort of like what's happening in the classroom, and then there's these systems that are really supporting that to be successful. So those are the things that you see here, things like scheduling, planning, curriculum resources, alignment, assessment, professional development. So MTSS, as I said before, it is a data-driven framework. Within MTSS, we really think about there being 4 primary assessment types that drive decisions, each of them having a unique function but complementary function. So there's universal screening. Universal screening has a unique function of just quickly predicting risk. So those are things like obedience and iReady. Mary had talked about iReady. Diagnostics serve as another function, which is to really pinpoint student-specific skill needs, and that's where you're really able to match instruction. So iReady, and then there's other sort of localized or sort of curriculum-based diagnostics that you can use as well, like the core phonics survey. And then there's the assessments that teachers are giving every time that they're engaged in Tier 1, which are those curriculum-embedded mastery measures. Those are used to guide daily, weekly instructional planning. And then there's progress monitoring for students who are receiving Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention to make sure that students, that we are constantly monitoring progress to determine their response to that intervention and making adjustments as needed. So that was a lot to distill down when we think about MTSS into a few slides, but I think some key takeaways is that when we're thinking about systems change, it is highly complex. And it can take up, into research has indicated this, that it can take up to 5 years to implement as part of routine practice with fidelity. It's a continuum of supports, it's a framework, it's not a program, it's not a schedule of meetings, it's really being strategic and intentional about the way that we use data. And again, it's an allocation of resources where we first start with prevention, and that is Tier 1. So as a curriculum department, you know, we're really thinking about how to support teachers in using data to make those decisions, those timely decisions, before discrepancies really begin to grow. And then JR talked about coaching and really thinking about how to leverage instructional coaches to support teachers in building their capacity to use data and make decisions. So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
So we tackled those 3 items because we thought it needed to be a, you know, kind of a baseline for future presentations that are going to take place that are much more data specific and providing, you know, cold hard facts that will start with our NJGPA, our access, our NJSLA, and then, you know, our localized benchmarks, of which will be continuously talked about during our curriculum committee meetings and reported out on a regular basis. So I hope that was helpful in providing what type of data we're utilizing, how we're utilizing it, and then the real purpose behind it all with those district goals that we put out there.
Can I ask some questions?
Thank you. Sure.
Just, this was great, thank you so much. It's awesome to see how much progress has been made in a year, and just the database framework is so critical, so thank you for going through that.
Absolutely.
Just a few questions. So with the academic readiness for high school, it's great to see that improvement. So again, 1 year is not a lot of time, but moving in the right direction. Have we talked about it, or we touched on it last year, the ability to see, especially entering into 9th grade, the Branchburg kids versus Somerville kids, so we make sure that we're really understanding if there's critical gaps within either district, that we're able to address that. So were you able to get to that level of data, or you were able to see it?
So we have been able to form a tight partnership with Brunswick, and they are sharing regularly those data points.
Yes.
Not only for 8th grade, but for middle school itself. So we've been able to bring that in, and that is now also being digested and utilized by our data team, and was utilized in placement of students this year,
Yep.
and in looking at the big picture. So yes,
Great.
we're
So
making good progress there.
Perfect, includes an up.
They do have different types of
Yeah.
assessments, but
Right.
yes, they are sharing it regularly.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we have a quarterly meeting with them, if I'm not mistaken, but at the very least, it's an open line of communication. It's great.
Perfect, yeah, just so that we're able to really pinpoint if there's
Absolutely.
issues. The MTSS, thank you for taking the time to go through that. I appreciate trying to make sure we're trying to cover the gaps, right, bring kids up to where they need to be. I'm also thinking about on the other end for those kids that are in high school, right, in honors and AP. And should we expect that we'll have that level of assessment with the instruction, with the resources and the curriculum, especially for those harder subjects where sometimes kids could fall behind, or maybe the teacher isn't seeing that there's gaps potentially within the classroom. So do you see this being adapted for those more rigorous courses in the high school?
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of it. It should be able to service all of our kids. And that's when we looked at the systems model of change, it was really to adapt it and to address it that way. Your INRS, your RTI, or other, you know, frameworks that people talk about, they're all encompassed in the MTSS. So we're making sure that we are rigorous in finding and meeting kids where they are if they're behind, but we're also making sure we accelerate and meet those advanced kids as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Is it too soon to ask what are the steps that are going to be put in place to enhance the Tier 1 instruction? So like, how is that groundwork being laid, just so that, I know we've talked about it during curriculum and instruction, but also just kind of, it's a perfect time to connect it now for the public,
Absolutely.
and to
Absolutely.
discuss that.
Well, we talked a little bit, JR referenced that we are, bringing on coaches, which is a big piece of that to help the teachers kind of understand the data, and that the focus of the coach model that we're using is based on analyzing student data and to support with that, and then making all decisions on how the coach will support the teacher based on what the students need. So that's a big piece of it. And then also just, creating the structure for ensuring that we're doing Tier 1 preventative work with the students, like using the data to decide, what are we seeing that most of the students need, where are the gaps, and then making a targeted plan to address that classroom-wide or small groups within the classroom. And then the amount of students eventually who will need those Tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, that population will kind of become smaller, and will hopefully be meeting the, 80% of the population, through that work. So it's really very data-driven. Thank you.
And utilizing and maximizing our meetings on a
That's,
monthly
that was
basis.
going to be a
With-
follow-up
with our staff
question, so
members.
how frequently
Absolutely.
will they be meeting with the
Constantly.
coaches
Yes.
and,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
also, for curriculum department meetings, we meet with the teachers, and we're always, forefronting, talking about data, analyzing data, and letting that kind of lead our discussions on where we need to go next. Analyzing the data to see where the students are, goal setting, and then, bringing in, professional learning to say, like, what are the instructional moves we need to make, right? And then progress monitoring, and then continually looking into that.
Can I just clarify too, I mean, Gina's role as a K-5 or Vanderveer supervisor
Yes.
for the most part, so I think that also in terms of just
Correct.
curriculum instruction
That's a
at
big,
that
huge
level is your
support for that
focus
as well.
I want to clarify that to make sure
Yes.
I'm understanding.
I think that's
the
important.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, is there somebody? that would like to comment?
So I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Bindu asked about the Accelerate program.
Absolutely.
I know that we had talked
Mhm.
last spring about, work being done this year
Yep.
on identifying students, and if you could maybe go through like what that would look like this year, especially I feel like high school has the honors classes, but more Vanderveer and middle school, how, I'm not sure what work was done on that this summer, but if you could explain
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
Well, Ariel Dendrick is working on that piece, and, I know with these, students being, tested this year, they're gonna be identifying, students' strengths in different, domains, and there'll be cycles, so that, students may, the cycles that she identifies are at, maybe there's like, a math cycle, that's focused on, geometry, I'm just gonna give you an example. The students who are strong in that area will get pulled for that cycle. But if there's like an engineering cycle, the students who scored, well in the engineering cycle will go there. If there's a writing cycle, it would be that. So, Ariel's gonna be sending more detailed information about that, but it will be addressed based on the students' individual needs. And they could go to multiple cycles depending on, their strengths. But I think it's, allowing opportunities for, more students to participate and allow their strengths to shine.
Wonderful, and that will be starting this year. Yes.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's just good background. When JR and I spoke about this, accountability for student achievement was an area in the board self-evaluation that was a bit lower than other areas. So we thought it was important to just give some context to work that took place. I think since the team's been together and, the way that's gonna look going into the school year, so the board has that just as a backdrop as well.
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate you taking the time to put that together, to present that information to the board. So I think when we're talking about just our own self-evaluation and some of those steps that we might want to take, when we think about, the regularity in terms of reports that would be coming to the board and the way that we can interact with that, it's important to realize that those are being scheduled out, I think, by the administration. So some of that is available to us as we go through the year.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what we want to do right now. Do you want to stay or do you want to be excused? I mean,
I think we're good unless you have more questions for Gina and Mary.
No, I do. I know you have other things to do right now, and yeah.
Getting ready for the school year.
All right.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thanks so much for your
Thank
time.
you. Have a good evening.
And they've had a great first day with our new staff.
Yeah.
So
Glad to hear it.
we have a fantastic new group.
Yes, very exciting today. Thank you.
All right, so, thank you for that. And, I think at this point, we have some time right now just to, again, look at the self-evaluation documents, just talk through a little bit about what thoughts are that individual board members have, reflection points that you had, and then, I think our discussion should help us shape. And I would say we don't want to have any more than 2 or 3 goals at the most. I think it gets very hard to kind of manage any more goals than that as a board. But I think kind of thinking about those high priority areas that we want to be able to put forth as potential board goals going into September, and then we would approve formally in September. So I'll put it out to board members in terms of comments that people want to make or observations that people have.
I know that we have vision / mission / goals, and I know that we do a lot of, we talk a lot about our mission and our goals, but I think we haven't really discussed thoroughly what our vision is. I think it's been alluded to, and I think we all kind of have a sense of it, but I feel like that needs to be clearly put in place, because that vision then will drive our mission and our goals. I just, you know, doing this evaluation, I don't think that I've ever heard us really talk about that vision, what we foresee. And I know and I understand that that is tied to the goals and to the mission statement, so I just am curious about, like, what does everybody hope for and, you know, envision for the district as a whole.
I'm not gonna talk much right now, so I'm throwing it out to all of you.
It's okay if what I said didn't make sense. I don't know if anybody wants to clarify, like,
I'm just thinking in terms of like procedure, like starting whenever like the board cycle begins, I guess in January, just making sure like we have all of our dates on the calendar, all of like the process in place of how the communities are going to work and communicate. I think there's a lot of talk about that this past year, but it wasn't put into action. So I think like tightening up our committee structure, putting that into effect. Is it a goal? I just put that under like board procedure, like little things that, and then I think maybe under that I'd also just put like adhering to like a good communication style or purpose. I know that there's concerns about like using cell phones versus like board issued laptops and stuff. We could just stay consistent. We're not going to talk via email, through text, if that matters.
So more like norms and procedures that.
Yeah, just to like, because I'm seeing like a lot of like, I think like the one that stood out to me was like something about like the policy committee wanting to meet more regularly. And I think that's like important for like any committee, right? Just to have like dates already on the calendar, that way people know. And as issues come up, it can be addressed. I'd also add to that, like before the committee meetings, like having agendas circulated, them prepared, and then meeting notes afterwards.
I feel like there
And
needs to
I feel
be
like-
more consistency with expectations from the committees. I feel like some committees will do minutes, do notes, whereas others do not. So I feel like there should be some consistency with that.
Goals.
I guess my initial comment was about just like what is our, you know, our vision for our district's future. And just wanting to discuss with everyone what they envision. I mean, I have ideas myself about like my hopes and dreams for the students of this district. And I'm just curious to hear what that looks like for all of you based upon what our constituents and stakeholders have approached us in the community, and also just some of the discussions that we've had here around this table. So I just don't want to lose sight of that at some point, but I agree with the procedures and I feel like things are becoming more streamlined. And I'm very grateful that you're here to help us with that, because there's consistency and stability that I don't want to speak for everyone, but having been on the board and not been on the board and then coming back on the board, it's just there's a lot of consistency right now. And I think that there's a lot of great work that is is being done. But I think part of that comes from us having this open discussion about what is our vision for our district's future. So.
I was just gonna say like the same thing, that now we have consistency, like we just, everything kind of keep going in the right direction rather than like it has been, so.
So, you know, one of the things about like vision statements and mission statements is those usually come out of, you know, more of a strategic planning process where there's a very comprehensive approach that gathers input from all stakeholders and is able to be synthesized into statements that, you know, are going to drive the work of the district. I think we've had some discussions about that process. If the board at some point this year feels strongly about that, kind of moving forward with that as a goal, then that can be a goal that the board establishes for itself. I guess I would caution everybody that, you know, it's also that type of thing that we do have some things in place that we're currently also working on right now, you know, in terms of year 2 of the audit and, you know, making sure that some of these things that are already happening don't get kind of lost in a process that becomes very wide in scope. So there's value to that. It's just a matter of when. And is it this year that we do something like that, or is it we say that we're going to prepare this year to kind of enter into a process next year? And those are very different approaches on that. So, you know, I think that something like a vision statement, to me, should come from the community.
Right.
And should be something that, while we all have an opinion, our job, as you said, is to represent stakeholders, and, you know, that the vision should be something that is coming from a much broader group than us. You know, our mission statement's fairly old. It's been on the agenda this way for quite a while. I mean, there's opportunities going forward to revisit all of those things, but, you know, I think for JR is, you know, finishing up his first year, you know, those are the things that we could talk about how to position well for the board, you know, to be able to kind of have a process going forward that we feel comfortable with.
I like that you said that, Bill, because I think we have these systems set in place now with collecting data, making sure that we have a good understanding of what are we actually looking at here. And so, yeah, I agree with you that should be something that we should consider maybe as we get through this audit and making sure things are set in place.
So to that point, Bill and I have had many conversations about this, and it was, you know, what's the right time? You know, some of the stuff that we have out there, you know, the mission statements and others are from years past, and, you know, it doesn't make them good, bad, or different, just makes them, they're a little older. But tackling them, I agree with Bill, has to come through a process in which we have students, we have staff, we have community members, we have board members, we're hearing from everyone. And to just arbitrarily replace this, you know, with a small committee or something, I don't think is the right way to go about it. And I agree with Bill too. We've had that talk about, there's still a decent amount of groundwork that needs to be laid. We're in a much better place, but we need a little bit more time to be settled to then go down that path. Because that can be anywhere from the 3-meeting session that school boards does to a 10-meeting session that other places do. There's a wide array of going down the strategic planning route. So I do agree that we need a little, you know, maybe this year at least to kind of knock off more of that, those most of the high priority items have been tackled, but more of those audit items get in a really good place where we feel our systems are solid and predictable, and then that might be the right time.
Couldn't agree more. I appreciate everybody's perspective.
Does it make sense, I know we talked about 2 or 3 board goals, but I mean, I think it's super important, of course, our vision and mission, because it's almost like now this district is at a really good inflection point, which is awesome, so then we're striving for more through that process. So does it make sense that however many we come to, that we tack that on as something to address in the future years, so that we don't lose sight of it? Because I appreciate that you brought it up, and that I think it's something we want to tackle. To your point, not this year because there's so much work going on, but we don't want to lose sight of that even if it's for next year.
Well, we might decide as a board, and there are multiple ways to do this. You could go out with an RFP and actually ask for providers, you know, and companies to actually submit proposals. And you know, that's something that we could task the administration to do, where we make a decision on who's going to be helping us this year going into next year, and not necessarily commit, you know, So going through a process starting in January. The other thing I would add is, and maybe you could talk a little bit about New Jersey Sky in terms of, you know, how that might also be helpful in that process, because we had a discussion about that as well.
I'm sorry.
New Jersey Sky.
Oh, yes.
That might also be
Absolutely.
helpful with that.
So, New Jersey Sky is something we're gonna be undertaking, so the third goal was to find that third-party, vendor. In this case, it's Rutgers, it's a free survey, that we're gonna be utilizing to, do that culture and climate survey that has been happening year after year after year. I wanna say the original that was sent out, that is now happening through Google Forms. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that has to be 8 to 10 years old, right, that survey? Go to them again, right?
Yeah.
That one was, when it initially came out as a, you know, a goal for school districts to gather that information regularly from staff, students, and the community, and then reflect and utilize it in your quarterly climate and culture committees. With that said, they have a much better version now. It is gonna provide us with, you know, very up-to-date and more nuanced information about that culture and climate that's going on here. And that'll be administered in the fall. And that will then we'll be able to look at that data, reflect on it, set goals off of it to continue to improve our culture and climate. Because you have anecdotal evidence, what you hear from people, what you may have an impression on, and we have those data points from those surveys that we administer every year religiously. But, you know, you could see people just plugging it in and on their phone answering those Google Forms very quickly. This is going to be a new process. Hopefully gives a fresh look at how people are interacting, how people feel about the community, how they feel about the academic supports, how they feel about how their students are achieving. And I think it'll be really important. So that'll help us then, you know, gather, you know, that baseline of information to then take those next steps.
And the thing I like about it too is that it gives you information from students in grades 3 through 12. It gives you information from staff, and it gives you information from parents. So there's an opportunity for 3 stakeholder groups to provide, and they'll disaggregate that data in multiple ways for you. So it's something again that, you know, it'll be a first time doing that as a district, but that information could be helpful for the board in terms of even when we talk about where should our areas of focus be. And I'm very curious about student voice on that as well. Right? So what do the students think about certain things? And, you know, being able to kind of get that information from them at different levels could also be helpful.
Will this be the first time that that's, okay, yeah, that's great.
So, all right. So maybe not a goal for this year, but something that we should, you know, set up as, and task the administration with the idea of, you know, maybe an RFP in the second half of the year that, you know, and we'll decide what committee that should live with in terms of providing feedback, that type of thing. But, you know, in terms of development criteria, that thing.
So we just, so Amanda, there's a very good point. Oh, thank you. Very good point that you brought up with regards to the vision. We just went through a strategic plan. We started in October, and now we're putting the final touches on our action plans.
When you say we?
The
Okay,
district
I just wanted to clarify.
And the very first session was a session of administrators, teachers, parents, members of the community who had no kids in the district, and students. And then from there, it broke out. Then we had just a meeting with only parents, and we got feedback from them. And then we broke down into core groups. There were 5 core groups, and each core group then it was like verbal diarrhea. Everybody just threw out at our moderator what they felt their vision and their goals were. And I think we started with 18, and then we just weeded them down until we came up with 5. And then every group was in charge of one specific goal. And through that, though, they developed what their, how they wanted to see that goal live in the district and in the community. And through all that, we came up with a vision statement. And now we're taking the action plans for each of those goals, and now we're assigning it. Like Ms. Kraska is going to be in charge. You know, she's going to be one of the team members that's going to work on X, and it just has timelines, and it goes not only for a year, but it's multiple years. And the good thing about the strategic plan is that even though you have a timeline, the timeline can move as you get more information for your goals. And so, like I said, from October to now, you know, we've come to a really good place, and now the document is a living document. It's going to continue to go. And the company we worked with was great, but I mean, I think that's something that if we work through this year, we can have it in place, say, for September 1 of next year, when we can start with all the groups and the meetings and get everybody on board, so that by the time the summer of 2027 rolls around, it'll be in place and ready to go.
Just based on your energy, it sounds like it, I mean, like,
It
I
was.
can feel that it was.
It was,
a
I thought,
really
it's the
good
first time I'd ever
experience.
done one, and I thought it was a very worthwhile task. Our superintendent brought it in, and it was just really great. You know, the people that did it work in school districts, and so they had the, you know, they were dynamic as well. They knew, hey, this was good. What works in one district may not work in another district. It depends on what, you know, it depends on where your current success level is, because the higher your achievement level, if you're a district that performs at like 95%, you only have 5% that you're trying to improve upon, where if you're at a district that's at 60%, you've got more to look forward to and more to improve upon. So I think it was a great process, and I look forward to doing it here.
May I ask you, and then I'm gonna be quiet so other people can talk, but, do you feel like going through that process that starting with this climate survey is a good launching
Yes,
point? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
we did a couple of surveys. We did a survey for only students, we did a survey for staff, we did a survey for the whole entire community together, and that was part of the very first step in the strategic plan. They helped us with the questions for the survey, and then it went out and it was anonymous responses and everything.
When you say they, this is.
It was a company that we worked for, and I'll tell you the cost for us to do the whole thing, because we added additional sessions. The initial cost was about $25,000, and it was about another $5,000 to $7,500 for 3 or 4 additional sessions as well.
Yeah, and
Thank you for sharing.
I think the planning of that, like, because I've done like 3 of these, you know, as administrator, I mean, the planning on that requires going into the year knowing you're doing this, you know, because you have to schedule time to get staff input, and you have to schedule time for meetings, and, you know, there's a commitment on the board's part as well, because we're very involved in that process, you know, as board members. You know, as we go through that, what I would ask is that the identification process, you know, for whoever a facilitator might be would live with the board, you know, in terms of, here are the recommendations, and that should be a board approval that we make with respect to, yeah, we endorse that facilitator based on the RFP. So, you know, there are ways to do that with an ad hoc committee, there are ways to do that, and you know, I think that gets at this idea of community leadership when we think about, you know, some of the categories that we talk about with, you know, self-evaluation, and it gets at vision, mission, and goals. And I think what you're feeling is very real, in the sense of, like, you know, we haven't talked about that in my time on the board. And it's something, again, I think we are in a much better position to be able to even have these discussions now than we were, you know, just a few years ago. So I'm glad you brought
And I
that
think
up.
that's why
Appreciate it.
I feel so enthusiastic about it, and that's why I brought it up, because I am feeling
Absolutely.
that we are moving in that trajectory. So,
Based on,
thank you for listening.
and for JR, Bill, and Derek, because you guys have been through it, JR, you run in the district. What do you feel the timeline would be to A, start, and B, finish?
I can talk about my experience.
Sure.
I mean, the lead up on this, you know, in identifying a facilitator is months, you know, so it's like we would probably need to start that process in the winter. And then, you know, look to have, I think, a decision made by late spring, early to late spring. I think, you know, Brian would need to budget for this, you know, and anticipate what the cost of that would be. I think once a facilitator is identified, there's a lot of back-end work that the administration has to do to actually make this work well in the district. And, you know, we have to involve, you know, stakeholder groups within the district as well. So that takes communication, that takes trust, that takes a lot of steps that have to be in place. I think the process itself, in my experience, if we were to do this, it would be very fall, early winter heavy next year, with the idea that at the end of, as Derek said, at the end of spring next year, we have a plan that we can approve as a board, as a strategic plan. So, you know, I think the process itself, from identifying a facilitator to going through the entire data collection, you know, really working with the facilitators to develop the plan and get recommendations from them, to actually finalizing a plan, that does take, you know, the better part of a year.
So JR, is this something that you think we can take on? Like, we're talking about winter this year?
So I believe, from my own experience, I did, it took about 7 to 8 months to do the process in my previous district, and it was rigorous, like you're saying, not as many meetings as you did, Derek, with your vendor. But those sessions were intense, they were well attended, and they took a lot of planning to get to them. So that run-up, that runway is the most important part. So I do agree with all the timelines that Bill gave, that you're gonna need that amount of time to prepare. So to answer your question then, I do think we wouldn't be ready to do it until next school year, but we should start the process so that we have that proper runway and we get all the stakeholder groups on board, we get all the folks and the dates in place so that we are kicking it off, with a process fully realized. So I do think the RFP process is valid and not just locking into one, right? We've all had different companies and experiences. It's worth sometimes even talking to them. They'll come out and present it because there's different styles that fit communities differently. A lot of them will adapt and change, here and there and tweak here and there, but they have a basic format. And you want to see if that format represents what we want and what we need. Some are more labor intensive, some are 3-4 sessions, but then after that is a long process with the vendor and the administrative team to lay out what that action plan looks like. And then you have to regularly look back at it and see where you are and adjust those goals and those metrics if necessary.
I mean, I think we've essentially said for last year and this year that we had gone down the road of, the curriculum audit and results audit, and that was what we were using to kind of guide the work of the board. And I think it's been guiding the administration as well.
Absolutely.
I think, we've already said, that at the end of this year, we would like to revisit, the audit itself, just to, kind of, do a check-in with regard to where we are, the levels of success that the district has had with that, but I think that would also serve to launch well, the process that we might need to use in terms of strategic planning.
Agreed.
So what I'm hearing is that, there's a goal somewhere in here, kind of around community data collection, with New Jersey Sky potentially, and perhaps board report outs with that to kind of publicly, suggest like what were the strengths in that data collection, what were the areas that, kind of rose as potential areas that the district would want to address. And then also, this idea that we want to identify a facilitator by the end of this year to kind of move the district forward with strategic planning. So that could be a board goal. I mean,
I think it's a good one.
You would have, as a result of that, you would create your mission statement and all
that would come out of strategic planning.
Yeah,
That all is something, because that vision should be a community effort, and that mission statement should be a community. That shouldn't be us saying this.
You'd be looking to get that done by September 2027.
We would look to have it, in my mind, we would want to have it approved at the end of the school year of 2027. The board would want to formally approve and adopt a strategic plan. And all of that would be a part of it. So the goals of the plan, the mission, the vision, the goals, and the steps that we're going to take to actually get to that. That would be a part of that.
So you have a goal there. You have
Right.
a
Probably multiple
timeline,
goals.
you have
Yep.
I mean,
the quantitative, the qualitative.
The whole process takes about a year from start to finish, and then, as we said, it's like a living document, it just keeps moving and moving. But the most important thing to start is you need board buy-in, right? So the entire board has to buy in to wanting to do this strategic plan, and when you buy into say you're gonna do it, then you have to buy in to work with Fidelity in order to get your goals and your vision statement, and then you have to work with the administration with Fidelity in order to make sure that it's carried out. Because if you don't, then you're just throwing your money away. And so if everybody can do that, then I think that's gonna be a hell of a goal to move forward with, and I think the district will be all the better for it if we do that.
so.
It's an awesome time to do it. We have a lot of young families moving in, and it's really exciting.
Agreed.
So how does that goal, what does that sound like? So the goal is to use this year to start preparing for the strategic?
I think we would have a goal of identifying a facilitator that would guide the district's work in developing a strategic plan during the what year would that be? 26, 27. So I think we can wordsmith. I think we can wordsmith something JR could share that in our updates, you know, that he puts out, and then I think what we're looking to do is approve something in September. So we can put something together and then people can have the opportunity to make comment or, you know, make suggestions in terms of how to refine that. But, you know, I think, well, but that's the intent of that, is to identify a vendor and, you know, facilitator to guide the district work in that area.
You said 2 to 3 goals, right?
I'm sorry?
You said 2 to 3 goals?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if there's room for one more, it's not like we have plenty, but also, I don't know if we want to tackle us as a board, just as individuals, learning more about AI and its impact in the education field. Whether as a board we can get like a speaker or some type of presentation on it, or maybe want to read like a book collectively or share information, or start just like a brainstorming session about it. But I think it's a pretty big technology that we don't want to just understand. And it's changing things pretty rapidly. I know, like in my workplace setting, we've adopted it, and it's being used. I don't know about everyone else's personal experience, but if we're going to be leaders in education, I think that it's good for those at the top to also understand AI, and to know what it is and how it works. I don't know if that's something that.
I mean, I think we have an awesome resource in Ariel, like
Yeah.
having gotten, you know, having worked so hard to get that grant for our district, put us ahead of the curve, even though the curve keeps curving very quickly for AI and that, but she might be a wonderful resource for us because if I'm listening to you correctly, you're stating that we as individuals need to learn more about AI, and you know, if our students are definitely receiving that now based upon using this grant and the funds.
Starting, yeah, right, you know, but also like how can we as individual board members use it at all to any extent. It sounds like there's gonna be a lot of, you know, we have a lot of committee meetings, can we use that to help draft an agenda, you know, for the committee meeting or whatever, or just help us in the day-to-day. Like, it doesn't have to be like a big onerous thing, but we could just use like the next months, just to learn more about AI. Just
But one of the things I want to focus on is governance. So, you know, so I think our goals should be related to governance. I'm having a hard time connecting the AI. Okay, I don't disagree with you that AI is present. It's here. It's just something, again, where does that fit into?
So I think in terms of governance, coming up with an AI policy that we're comfortable with in the district.
But we have an AI policy right now.
Okay, I mean, all right, I mean, it's true.
Perhaps it's, I don't disagree, actually, there was a really good TED talk by the guy who founded Khan Academy about AI. I mean, I use it all the time for work, and this was AI in relation to education, because I try to get my high school kids to use it as its own tutor. To your point, it's not necessarily tied to governance, but we do have this awesome AI grant money, and so perhaps that's something that's maybe more within JR's realm versus board of not say this correctly, but how do we ensure that our kids and our staff are staying on top of the curve when it comes to technologies like AI, so that they are using it for their benefit, because if they're not figuring it out now, they are screwed when they go to college. To your point, it's not governance, but it's something that I know you have your eyes on, so maybe it's more how do we stay informed of what that looks like.
Or to the end goal of governance also, like what is our understanding about AI and its, I don't know, like how is it being integrated in education, and would there be any like academic issues that arise out of this? You know, are students now using AI to generate answers and we don't know? Are they just taking a photo of their math problems and it gives them the answer? You know, and it's probably all true. So if we know that, how do we engage with that, right? Like, and that, how does that play into governance? I mean, I'm sure we'll have disciplinary issues. I mean, we've seen in the news certain districts having to deal with AI-generated images of people that get circulated, right? And I think that we don't want to be a board that's uninformed about the technology and how it works.
I mean, I feel like Ariel has like really set the precedence for that and tried to get ahead of the curve by helping us to create this policy that although it is moving, and I don't wanna speak for everybody, I don't wanna speak for,
You're saying, right,
you know,
and the
I
guidelines
just-
presented.
and the guidelines that are there, and of course, just kind of like what you were saying, Derek, like, it's gonna have to be a living, breathing policy because this is changing so rapidly, so it does need to be part of our discussion as a board and with your guidance, you know, and letting us know whatever you're learning and how,
Absolutely.
and us reading and being aware of what's happening in other districts to educate ourselves so that we're trying our best. Because there's even like a video out there of like, you know, AI now of a teacher creating her lesson plans using AI, and then the kids going, oh, my teacher asked me this question and how do I answer it? And it's, you know, how do we get that authentic learning where students are having to problem solve and engage and get more of this face time so that we create leaders and using it in the manner that you were saying, and you that just
So I hope
Not
the
leaving them
workshop
behind.
has some
I'm sure they
some
will. I'm
things
sure they will.
on that. I
Yeah.
mean, that would be.
we
the
have to
perfect-
take it upon ourselves to take the time to educate, to attend the educational offerings that are being offered through the, I'm gonna totally forget the acronym because my brain has been working all day.
JSB.
Thank you. So, you know, I try to attend as many as I can, you know, within the time limit that I have with being a professional and all of that, but I think a lot of what you're saying, Mateo, falls upon us as individuals to be interested and to educate ourselves, and then that allows us to be in governance with our superintendent.
But it's incumbent upon the superintendent and his team, so the superintendent and Gina and Mary and everybody else, to put the parameters in place and to monitor AI within the district, because that's an administrative function. So it's up to them to ensure that the students and the staff are utilizing it the correct way. It's up to the parents to understand it a little bit as well, and it's up to us as board members to understand it, but as far as governance, I don't think it's the board to govern. What the board does is we approve the policy, and we ensure that JR has the tools with the policy to run the district as he needs it to be run, giving our staff and our students what they need, and part of that is the AI policy. And with the grant that Ariel got, and with the work that JR and his team are doing, I think we're moving towards that, and as Amanda said, AI changes every day. It's probably changed 15 times since we've been sitting here already, right? So that's incumbent upon JR and the district and the team to do that and bring us the information.
But I would say if we want them to report on that, either through the curriculum committee or to do a presentation on, you know, because there's been a lot of work that's been done around AI guidelines for student use, AI guidelines for staff use. I think if the board wants to be informed about what's happening in the district
Yeah.
and how that's unfolding, then that's a presentation, and we can ask
Absolutely.
the administration or direct the administration to arrange to have a presentation done. And, you know, that can fuel a discussion that board members wanna have with that. I think I make a distinction between that being like a long-term goal versus, you know, that's an item that we can request a presentation on. You know, I think, you know, like what you said at the beginning of the meeting around committee and communication expectations, I think that's a governance goal. Like, that's something we can look and say, like, we have to continue to improve our communication structures through committees. And, you know, the idea of scheduling committees and having that separate a year, and knowing that those are when, and everybody knows, and having agendas shared ahead of time, so other board members can actually comment or ask a question about an agenda before a meeting takes place. I think those are all good things for us to consider. And that's something that I think is very actionable for JR, but it's also something we can measure for ourselves in terms of like, yeah, we did a better job at that type of thing. Other thoughts? And I don't mean to, I understand what you're saying.
I'm just throwing out ideas, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
ideas too.
Yeah.
I do think they're good topics for us to
Yeah.
explore, yeah.
And just to close that part out, having the presentation will be great because, yes, there's policy. For me, I'm most interested on how, as a parent, can I correctly encourage the kids to use it. So policy is one thing, but I mean, I use it every day. So how do we understand how are they using it? How are the teachers using it, right? So that they're continually getting better. So I would definitely love to hear that. I'm sure the community would as well.
Sure.
So if we add it to agenda topics, that'd be great.
That's great, okay.
Yep.
Other thoughts from other members? I think, I'll just throw this one there. Policy was the other area that was, in a summary, weakest for us. The policy committee pretty much only meets when needed right now. I'm trying to understand if board members in some of their comments were suggesting that the policy committee should meet more regularly with the idea of discussing hot topics or issues that are out there in terms of, opinions that board members have relative to certain policies. We adopted, basically a whole suite of policies from Strauss-Esme. So those policies are ones that are recommended, by Strauss-Esme or mandated by the state, and, we're covered in terms of our policy provider. Strauss-Esme puts out fairly regular updates about changes to policy or recommendations about regulations. We've talked about how that has to unfold. I don't know exactly how often that happens, so is it regular?
It usually comes out, if not bi-weekly, then it comes out once a month, but then typically what the policy committee would do is once the superintendent gets those updates, they would convene a meeting and say, hey, we just got 7 policy updates mandated for policy and regulation, let's discuss them. And that's after the superintendent had the opportunity to take those policies and provide them to the appropriate staff members so that they can review them and agree or disagree with the changes. Then they come before the policy committee then has a really good debate on them, and then it goes out for first reading and then second reading.
So here's a great example. I just received one, I want to say, whenever I emailed you guys 2 weeks ago. The majority of the policy alerts actually reflected Brian's job in his department.
Correct.
I think all of them except one were directly related to there. So his group are making recommendations to us. We had set a date, but those policy alerts, if you will, come in bulk usually. So they're not trickling out one at a time. It's an a more efficient way to do it. So it's hard we had decided it's hard to just set a monthly on that, but we can say within a certain couple weeks of receiving them, we have that meeting, or as soon as physically possible. It also depends, some of them are like mandated immediately, right? For instance, when we had the COVID crisis, right? Those policies had to immediately be adopted because some of them had public health, implications. But generally, some of the others, you have a little bit more leeway as to how much time, and we just try to set the policy date as a meeting as soon as possible. So, just want to follow up what Bill said, just an expectation of where we want to go with that. So we can have quarterly on the calendar and then add in others as needed, because I think Strauss thought they were doing quarterly on the big drops of them. And then they'll send anything that's immediately necessary in subsequent policy alerts. There's different ways of doing it. So I can do quarterly on the calendar and then add as needed. Maybe that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine.
Okay.
And that's the procedure that you stated that happens? Yep. Okay, I was never aware of like how that happens,
because in years past, whenever there were policy updates that were sent to the district, they were never shared with the board.
Okay, so we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will set quarterly and then as needed after that for any type of immediate alerts. And I'll see if I can get a calendar. They have to be at least vague understandings of when they're going to release them. So I will contact Strauss.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I mean, that was good discussion so far, and I think we've gotten some direction in terms of what areas of focus might be. And I feel like we also addressed the areas that were weakest in the self-evaluation.
Just one observation, because we talk a lot about getting stakeholders involvement, which is very important, but I think everybody needs to realize that the majority of the stakeholders, be they teachers, parents, students, don't realize what is and what is not the function of the board. So when you're creating your vision, always keep that in mind.
Well, and that's a good point, Dan, and that's something that when we start the strategic plan process, that will be discussed there as well. But that's also something that between the superintendent, the board president, we can inform the public of that as well. But that's a good point.
I just wanted to remark on the governance, team relationships, and accountability. To me, I think it was a really good reflection on how, to see how we scored on that. I feel like overall, our board is very healthy in listening, and that really reflected it. It was nice that I wasn't the only one who was feeling that way, to see what everyone else was feeling, because now that JR is here and we have this stability, I feel like we're really at this point to evolve in such a wonderful way, and a lot of that means that we have to listen to each other, and we have to be open to not being rigid in our thinking, and to learn from one another. And I think that's the thing that I appreciate most about being on this board with all of you. And I think that really reflected that, and it was nice to see that other people were feeling that way as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of you, because I feel like it's the key to our success.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we have direction on, I'm reading possibly 3 goals. One around accountability and student achievement, and just being able to educate ourselves and to receive regular updates, to focus on just the progress being made within the audit and continuing that work. I think we have a goal around identifying a strategic planning facilitator. Bless you. That we would look to launch an RFP in the second half of the year to engage in that process going into next year. And then I view this also in terms of, we have a goal around committee and communication expectations in terms of our own governance processes. And tightening up some of our committee work. I think we made some good strides with that this year. I think it's much better than it was. I think JR is instrumental in this, because he has to, with his administrative team, really facilitate that process, because it's something, again, that for all of us to receive information in a certain order, there's got to be somebody that's actually pushing that to us. I even think in terms of the weekly updates that JR provides us, he's made a lot of steps this year in terms of telling us when committees are meeting, so we know that already. Maybe the next step is let's have the agendas linked in there ahead of the meeting taking place, so everybody knows what the topics are that are going to be discussed, that type of thing. So those are little tweaks that I think build on work that we did this year. Those committee meetings are really important. We only meet once a month as a board, with the idea that committees are meeting in the second half of the month or in the other parts of the month, and really, giving us time to do that. So I think it's just important that we, kind of double down on that process and make sure that we're comfortable with that. But those 3 goals, does that capture what everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Okay.
What's
So,
an RFP?
request for proposal.
Yes, I was gonna ask for him
Sorry.
the alphabet soup of education.
Sorry.
Too many of them.
That's not just education.
I know, but more so than.
So, but I think our process would be to, we'll tighten up goal statements that we can use as a board. Looks like we'll have 3. I'll talk with JR about that. We'll kind of wordsmith that a little bit. We can run it through AI a couple times if we want to, and see what it spits out for us. You never know.
It makes it smarter.
I use it all the time. I know what you're saying.
I actually for my mission for my company, over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not disputing the legitimacy of it's here, and people always say AI today is the worst it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's just going to keep on either getting dumber or getting smarter, but it's going to do something for us.
Robots are coming too, so we'll have that as well.
Maybe they'll come to the board meeting.
It might.
Any public comment?
There may be an extra word.
So process-wise, though, we would look to approve goals in September. So we'll have them on the board agenda for approval. We'll go through the formal process of approving them as a board, and then, those will be placed on the agendas going forward. All right? Okay.
Great.
All right, are they here?
No, they're not. So, well, yes, but
So I see
I
one
would-
of our.
right. I would recommend that we continue board business until we go into executive session.
Well, let's see if anyone else is here.
He's the only one I saw. Yeah, he's
All
the
right,
only one.
so we are not going to enter into executive session just yet. We'll now move on to approval of the minutes.
Motion.
What's the motion?
A motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Resolved that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the Board of Education meetings as follows: June 10, 2025, regular meeting, June 10, 2025. Derek made a motion.
And Mr. Clausen
Mr.
seconded.
Carson seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
So we have 2 abstentions.
I think I abstained too.
It smells good in here.
If we have 3 abstentions.
Yep.
Can we do- Okay, 3 abstentions, and then 1, you got that? For Brian? Okay, all right. Board President's reports. I am not going to make too much for President, but to welcome staff back for the school year. I know a lot of work goes on in the summertime to get classrooms set up. I know we have teachers on our Board of Education that are also setting their rooms up and doing all that work ahead of that. So I just wish everybody a really great start to the school year. And, we have a meeting in September, so we'll revisit all that as we get through that.
Yep.
All right, Superintendent's report.
I also have a very short report. I can speak to a very exciting meeting today of our new teacher orientation. We had some tremendous conversations in day 1. It's a 3-day affair put together by Dr. Cifuentes and Mary Kane to support our new teacher and their transition in. All of our administrators participate. Various important topics are touched upon and supported, and then we get our teachers into their classroom as soon as possible. And a very special thank you to Denise, who's going to be helping us on our bus tour on Thursday around Somerville to show the town off to all of our new staff members.
There's a bus tour of Somerville.
Welcome Julie, the cruise director.
Does the downtown Somerville 11 know this? This could be the start of something.
Thank you, thank you, Julie.
Are you gonna be throwing out like popsicles?
Yeah.
Oh,
On this tour bus.
bracelets.
So very,
that's
very good
awesome.
things coming. So
That's cool.
it's a great mix of folks, some alumni, many folks from other locations and different backgrounds. And we were able to fill, as you see with the late addition there, the open positions and the leave replacements that we're struggling with. So I do apologize that I had to throw them last second, but we need to get those in so our classroom and our positions are filled. So that's a really positive one. Also want to echo what Bill said and welcome all of our staff members back. Very excited. I've been seeing many of them in the hallways getting their rooms ready. It's always an exciting time as you get to refresh and restart. So I'm excited to welcome them back officially on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we get to welcome our students and our families back, which is the best day of the year. So can't wait for that. Hopefully the weather's good. It's been good, and good things to come. And everybody is geared up and ready and excited to welcome our students back.
Great. All right. I don't believe we had any committee meetings that we need to report on. So,
No, the only thing, I did attend the public safety meeting as our rep, and also the library board as our rep, and of course, everyone's heard about our library is now closed, till the repairs are made.
right.
They knew that was coming. There is a brand-new library director for the whole county system. And as far as public safety, they just said if we hear of any concerns, traffic-wise or parking-wise, to bring it to their attention.
Yeah, and I know they since rezoned right out in front of the middle school as well. They took away 2 of those parking
They
spots
did.
to improve the visibility in terms of street crossings, that type
They
of
did,
thing.
and
So
I
we
know
appreciate
they're
the work
working
that's
on
taking
some
place there.
on Grove
Yep.
Street.
Yeah, just to make sure it's safer for crosswalks. That's great. Okay. All right, thank you for doing that, yeah, and, you know, that's something, again, I appreciate you bringing those up, because we don't always get those.
Yeah, well, that's the
Committees.
thing, they don't meet every month, so
Right.
whenever they do, I will report
Great,
back
thank
whatever
you,
they,
okay.
Excellent.
whatever happens.
I also just wanted to thank Gina, Mary, and JR for the thorough report earlier in
Yes.
regards to curriculum. I feel like that was very useful and helpful, and I also, as somebody stated, really like the way that Gina explained the RTI, and for people who may not understand that. So, thank you.
Excellent.
Super.
Thank you.
All right, why don't we move forward with the preschool through 8th grade motion? Do you want to read that, Derek, please?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to approve items 1 through 54 under preschool through 8th grade, and that they're moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, and have these appointment and salaries are contingent upon verified documentation.
Is there a second there?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Where's Mr. Boyce?
He's doing so. I'll take the roll. Should I take the roll? Or when the superintendent?
Okay, Mr. Jess, please take the roll.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes,
Mr. Jess is a yes. Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Sherwin,
Yes.
Ms. Kraska,
Yes.
Ms. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, and moving on to page 23. I think Mr. Boyce wants this sheet.
Voice is back.
Our 9th through 12th grade and district-wide motions.
I would like to make a motion to approve items 55 through 104, inclusive of item 75 on the updated for the agenda. For grades 9 through 12, they'd be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent on item number 75. 20 looks on the other. An appointment of salaries contingent upon and verified documentation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Sherwin, discussion? Mr. Boyce, can you do a roll, please?
Yes, Mrs. Van Horn,
yes,
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes, recuse myself from 102.
okay, abstain from 102. Mrs. Sherwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska,
Yes.
Mrs. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on, old business. Are there any old business items? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close old business?
Moved it.
Mr. Jess, a second.
Second?
Mr. Carlson, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Old business is now closed. Moving on to new business. Is any new business items?
I have one thing.
Mhm.
The Somerville Environmental Commission is looking for volunteers tomorrow to help with the high school rain garden for planting.
Great.
I don't, this is not old business, I mean, new business, I mean, it is, I just wanted to make a comment that didn't really fit under comment for,
Okay.
I have no words anymore because I've been talking about educational information all day. Number 29 and 85 that we voted on about the change in salary guide placement, I just wanted to commend the educators in our district for continuing to enhance their education, and I think it speaks volumes that we have so many who are continuing to, despite their busy schedules, and I'm sure many of them are parents, they're continuing to model what it takes to be a lifelong learner. So I just wanted to make sure that all of them know that we see them and appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you for the comment.
So I didn't
Okay.
know if that fell into the right area to bring that up.
It's all good. Okay. Any other new business items? Okay, can I have a motion to close new business? Mr. Jess
second,
and Ms. Van Horn, a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
May I make a suggestion?
Mr. Jess, would you like to make a
I would
suggestion?
like to. I would, since the only order of business we have left is executive session, I would like to say that we make the motion to go into executive session, we second it, we vote to go in, and then we vote to adjourn, so that we don't have to come back since we're not gonna take any action, correct?
Yes.
Right. So that being said, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of pending and anticipated litigation and attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a second on the executive session. There's Ms. Sherwin, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Carlson made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Sherwin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we are going into executive session at 6:06, and we will adjourn the meeting at this point, and then we will not be coming out of the executive session, so we wish everybody a wonderful start to the school year. Thank you.
Thank you.